Hello, everyone, and welcome to our LinkedIn Live brought to you by CargoWise, the leading global logistics platform. My name is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey. I'm the founder and host of Let's Talk Supply Chain and the founder of the Blended Pledge, and I will be your host and moderator for today. And so today we're talking about unlocking the future of logistics. We are in a really exciting time of change for the industry. Rapid digital advancement is opening up all sorts of possibilities for organizations to improve productivity and efficiency. But are logistics companies prepared? Whilst they're increasingly recognizing the strategic imperative of embracing digital transformation, there are plenty of obstacles standing in the way, and still some confusion around exactly what digital transformation means and looks like for the industry. So, CargoWise commissioned a brand new piece of research to help shed some light on exactly what is happening across the industry when it comes to digital transformation. What are the challenges and opportunities? What are the main areas of focus that are making the most impact? And how do other key trends like visibility, collaboration, and customer experience weave into successful transformations? Well, I'm joined by three amazing industry professionals to discuss those big questions, to share the findings from that research, and really dive into what those findings mean for your business and for the industry. So, welcome to the stage, Gander, General Manager of Global Sales at WiseTech Global, Erin O'Leary, CIO at the Janel Group, and Mohan Dipsingh, President at PositivePC. Thanks so much for all of you for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so let's start by talking briefly about the research. So, Jean, give us an overview. What is the research all about, and who did you talk to achieve the most meaningful results? And before you answer, I just want to let everybody know we are going to answer any questions that you have a little bit later on in the show. And we're also going to be giving you exclusive access to that report within the comments as well. So, Jean, tell us about this report.
Well, thank you. At WiseTech, we say we change the world of logistics one innovation at a time. And much of this insight and momentum comes from our CargoWise community of 18,000 customers based on what they need day to day. But what we wanted to do was to take a longer term macro lens of what we're seeing out there and what the future looks like and what people are requesting day to day. So we commissioned this research of nearly 500 supply chain professionals across different industry segments and different geographies. And it was following our 2022 Reuters research regarding the link of technology and productivity. And that's where we're able to get some of this insight.
Amazing. And I can't wait for everybody to see the report. So, what was your aim in conducting the research? Were there key questions that you wanted answers to, or you were hearing from your customers that they really wanted to know about what everybody else was kind of thinking around digital transformation?
Well, there's kind of three areas we were focused on when we formulated this research. We wanted to get an industry-wide view of technology investment landscape. Where have people spent their money? Where are they going to spend their money?
Yeah.
What's their priorities?
Mhm.
We also wanted to get some insight to challenges and barriers in the market facing their objective to pursue digital transformation. And then the last part is the human element. You know, although it's a given that leading technology is necessary, but not necessarily sufficient to go through this journey of digital transformation, how does organizational change management ultimately define success? So that was the three areas that we largely focused on.
Amazing. And why carry out this research now? I mean, have we stabilized enough post-pandemic to get really a clear picture of what's happening across the industry? Like, are we at a stage where we're finally being more strategic and less reactive so we can be more clear about the role of digital transformation within our organizations? Now, Jean, I'd like to start with you, and then I want to bring Erin and Mohan into the conversation.
Okay, perfect. And you're right. We learned a lot over the last 3 years. So in order to look forward, let's look backwards a little bit. So in March of 2020, the world was coming to a halt with the pandemic. in how are we going to work remotely and digitally, and even the companies that had the desire and the investment to go through digital transformation necessarily didn't have the discipline to have it in place. And then by today, it looks like it's a good led recovery. And people that had been furloughed are back to work, and they're looking for more human resources to throw at it. At that point, we're starting to move from beyond a bounce back to an actual supply chain crisis. And it was at that point, I think, that people realized that visibility was a must, and they were looking for a silver bullet in that. And what the research showed was that, an astounding 78% of the logistics orgs had invested in new visibility tools and tech since 2020.
Wow.
And if we take a look at that today, they realize the visibility is more important than knowing where the goods are and when they're arriving, but it's basically assigning resources and arranging trucks and warehouses to it. So it's moved beyond visibility as a commodity to automation. Part of the core data and tightly woven into operations.
Awesome. Erin, what did you think about all of this? Where are things going? How have you been thinking about digital transformation during the pandemic, and how are you thinking about that now?
Yeah, obviously pre-pandemic, I was pro anything tech related, anything digital we could do to grow the business. And I think over the last 3 years, the pandemic's not only allowed for us to accept help from technology, but it's also forced us to need to accept help from technology. So I think you'll see with a lot of businesses within our industry, if you're not willing to embrace technology and start participating in that digital transformation, there's a chance you won't survive or you didn't survive. So right now it's critical to go back to what Jean said, really visibility is not, a nice to have anymore. It's a must have for survival within the industry. I think the pandemic allowed us to see our operational strengths and weaknesses, but now moving forward, we have an opportunity to fine tune what we put into place and work on, being more proactive and creating better efficiencies within all of our organizations, internally and externally. And through that collaboration, that always comes up that we'll do better if we work together. And I know we'll talk about that more. So considering digital solutions, my opinion, is now the new norm coming out of the pandemic, right? It's a way of life these days.
Yeah. Well, and you said the right word there, being proactive instead of reactive, right? But now it's also thinking about what the priority is, right? Where are we going to, what technology are we looking at? What does that mean for our business? And that's what I really liked about the research here, because it really dove into that. So Mohan, talk to us about what you're seeing, what you're hearing. Are people, obviously they're thinking about technology, but how are they thinking about it? What are the discussions that you're having right now?
So look, it's absolutely changed, right? And just talking about what Jean said, hindsight's always 2020, right? We look back, we have to look back to see, how it was back then. But it's right now, it's a good time to conduct a research like this and see what the market's doing. Because we shouldn't forget, what was required to remain operational when the world just changed overnight, right? There were some companies that struggled to stay operational, while others it was just seamless. They were able to transition, and the ones that invested in technology were able to transition smoothly into remote ops just literally overnight. Right. However, the ones that were still not invested, still had aging systems, and were still paper-based, struggled quite a bit to get transitioned. And I think it was an eye-opener for a lot of companies to say, look, we've got to invest in technology, because it's no longer optional, it's required. You must have it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Erin and Mohan, when you saw this report, you read the report, you dove into some of the insights that came out of this report. I'm going to start with you, Mohan. What were some of the things that really stood out for you? And why do you think that this research is so important for supply chain professionals, the industry right now?
I think it's really eye-opening, because what we think is happening out there is not really what's happening. So once you do some research and you take a look and you survey actual respondents of what's going on, then we see certain things that stand out. And it was pretty, we're going to dive into some deeper details into the key points, but we saw some very interesting things that without doing research, we wouldn't have seen, and we wouldn't have known that, yeah, these are the areas that needs to be addressed. And look, technology is changing and it emerges rapidly, so you have to stay ahead of the game. And what was relevant a year ago is probably no longer relevant or not as important. So that's kind of what we're seeing.
Things are changing so quickly, right? What we were talking about even 8 months ago, those conversations are changing, even as of today. So, Erin, what did you think about the report? High level, how has that helped you?
Yeah, similar to what Mohan had said, I think the industry and our businesses are all ready. At different levels of preparedness, of course. I'd say that a lot of staff may not still be ready, even everything we've been through in the last 3 years. I think there's still maybe a little bit of discomfort there, and I know we'll talk about that. But overall, we're ready for it. Things keep changing. We need to be able to evolve and keep up with it.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the current landscape of what logistics looks like right now. What are some of the challenges that you're seeing? What are the trends as we look towards Q3 and Q4, which I can't believe I'm saying that right now. Like, we're in the middle of July, and I'm not sure about all of you, but I feel like this year has just sort of blown, or at least the first half of this year has just sort of blown by. So what are you looking at? What are the trends that you're watching for Q3, Q4, Erin?
Yeah, I narrow it down to 3 big items: new tech solutions, automation, and sustainability. Those seem to be some pretty important items that I know internally in our organization, and then when you start talking with others and networking, come up on a daily basis. There's a lot of tools and resources out there when it comes to what's available related to tech solutions and digital transformation. You have to do a lot of work to research and sift through the noise. There's a lot of solutions that may say that they're one thing. In reality, what you're being delivered may be something entirely different. And I think it's important to vet all that, be prepared for that before you attempt to implement that within your organization. And, collaboration between teams too ties back to all of that. And not just internally, but externally. And I think I already said that, but being able to look at the landscape and what you want to do and be able to work together. So that is probably another area to target.
Well, and also the big shiny objects, right, aren't necessarily the ones that are the priority or necessarily what we need in our business at this particular moment. So, Jean, I'm going to go to you because, after what Erin has said and looking at those 3 particular things, how is a focus on digital transformation going to help us address these issues on a business level, but also on an industry level?
As Erin said, and Mohan said, some people were ready and some people weren't. The ones that weren't ready, realized that they should have gone through a transformation project years ago so that it's well vetted. And they would be part of the group that Mohan mentioned that didn't miss a beat as they, made the adjustment to going digital. But when the supply chain crisis hit, then they were too busy to go through the change element that Erin was talking about as far as the human element. So what we see now, coming off of this, the demand has softened somewhat out there, so people are able to catch their breath. But the war chests are well funded, and when the market starts to rebound aggressively, I think what we'll see this time around is that they're going to solve it through technology and processes and automation versus what they had to do in the past with firefighting by throwing more bodies at the problem. So I think that everyone's going to learn from this and come out the other end, much stronger.
Yeah, I just remember my days working at a freight forwarder and the stacks of file folders that I had on my desk and the amount of paperwork that I went through. We're talking, 6 or 7 years ago, and I was using a typewriter up until 2014.
And that's interesting. And working with Mohan, when this first came to a head, people that were on CargoWise had these tools at their disposal, paperless, digital, workflow, everything. Right. But having the tool, but not the discipline, there were some people that basically said, we're still not operating optimally digitally. We still like to have a few files on our desk.
Yeah.
There are people that had to make a real quick change with as far as being 100% digital when it hit.
Well, and I think I was talking about a stat the other day. Still 76% of people, I believe, are still using Excel. And then another conversation that I had the other day was really about we have to educate around the tools and the technology and what's really available at your fingertips to help you do your job. If we don't know everything that's available to us from that technology that we've implemented, then we're really missing out. And I think that that's a really key part of digital transformation, is not only the change management and getting everybody on board, but getting people to really understand how the tool is going to help them on a day-to-day basis.
Well, you also have a lot of organizations and, in this example, that are using CargoWise, right? And they may be only using a small percentage of what's available within that platform. And so that goes back to all of this. Are we utilizing the tools that we currently have? Jean pointed out some of those tools available within CargoWise.
Yep.
And you'll find some customers of WiseTech that are using CargoWise, but they're also still having a manual paper process. So we have our files in the platform, but we also have our files sitting on our desk, and it's a tough habit to break. It's a slow process. I'm sure a lot of organizations are much better at this point, but it does still exist in different ways throughout the industry.
Yeah, and it leads to a little bit of chaos too. So Mohan, I want you to jump into this conversation here because I think you've got some insights to share before we dive into the report. But for those watching, I want to know from you, what trends are you looking at for Q3 and Q4, and what technology investments are you looking at? I want to say hi to John over on my personal LinkedIn. Thanks for joining us. So Mohan, did you want to jump in here and add any insights?
Yeah, I think Erin has hit the nail on the head, right? You could have the best tool in the world. If you don't use it properly, it's basically useless. And we see this all the time as CargoWise consultants. We go in and everyone's got the same system. Everyone has the same tools, but the way that it's used varies tremendously from one client to the next. And we show up and we show clients things that we're doing in CargoWise, and they're taken back. They're like, "Wait, you could do that in CargoWise?" So they have the tool. It's just that it's not being utilized. Now, some of that is probably because they don't have proper training or haven't taken on the initiative to do that. And also, you need a bit of creativity, right? We have a lot of experience setting it up and making it work a certain way, whereas someone who hasn't done that wouldn't be able to make it work that way.
Absolutely. So let's dive into the report. We've been talking about this report for quite a while on this conversation already, and I am really interested to find out what you've discovered. So let's start with investment and priorities, because with inflation, rising costs, and the impact of the pandemic, budgets really are kind of tighter than ever. So are businesses investing in technology, Mohan? And I'm gonna showcase some of the graphs from this report so that we can talk to that.
Yeah. So look, businesses are they're investing, right? From what we're seeing in the industry, companies are definitely serious about technology. And you have to keep in mind there are different catalysts that drive change and investment in technology. And it's usually based on industry conditions. Sometimes it's just a technological change or sometimes a customer demand. But here's what we see. When the industry is on an upswing and everything is busy, companies are investing in technology because they cannot scale with what they have. So they're looking for something that will help them scale. And also in these times, labor is really tough to find. So you turn to technology to help you have scalable solutions to fill that void. On the other hand, when things slow down, companies are now saying, wait a second, we have a little bit of breathing room. Let's stand back and let's do those projects that we couldn't do when we were busy. So we see a shift from, everything's on fire, let's put it out, to, okay, let's prevent the fire. So companies do invest in technology and projects, but it changes, depends on the time. And it's pretty consistent. We stay pretty busy regardless if the industry is doing well or not, because you've got customers on both sides of the fence.
Yeah, well, and the graphs that we just showed, like 82% are increasing investment in technology. 64% of that is supply chain management systems. I mean, the numbers are there. The numbers are are big. Everybody is talking about that. But, other than supply chain management systems, which we see at 64%, what are they investing in? With limited budgets, like I was talking about before, prioritization is the key, right? Not the big shining object. What do we need right now in order to for our operations to be efficient? What are businesses focusing on when it comes to their digitization, IT transformation efforts? Mohan, I'm going to start with you, and then I'm going to go to Erin.
Yeah, so it varies, but we see a lot of shift from clients that are moving from legacy systems and siloed systems to something that's holistic and can handle everything in one place. That's what everybody's trying to look for. They're looking for cloud-based solutions, something that's not on-prem, something that's scalable, flexible, secure. And from an ROI perspective, it just really makes sense to do something like that. So companies are investing in that, and also just new technology. Some companies are just looking for the next best thing out there and being, bleeding edge, cutting technology, early adopters, and that could be a good thing in some cases. So yeah, Erin, I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, so at Janel Group, definitely continuing to invest in technology. Our current focus is, what can help us to improve current internal operational processes, and then as well as providing better customer experience. So some of those may be some customer-facing tools, things that we can integrate or add on to our existing, setup and structure. And then along with that, what other solutions can we add to help us save time, automate redundant tasks? That gets brought up a lot. Basically to make the operation better end product. And then I should add to investment in cybersecurity. I know not everyone loves to talk about it, but super important for us. Obviously we rely on our vendors and partners for what they have set up with their cyber security infrastructure if we're being hosted by them, but also our own internal setup we have to be very careful with and invest in that as well. That's something that's not going to go away anytime soon.
Yeah, I've been talking about that a lot, that it's one of the top risks for supply chains in 2023. And I don't think that's going to go away.
No.
There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of people that touch different points of a supply chain. And with cybersecurity, I mean, it's really, really important. We've seen that over the last couple of years as well. So I'm glad. Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Well, that was one of the surprising discoveries of the survey, that only 23% were spending, were investing in cybersecurity.
Wow, that's low.
I can't understand why that's so
scary.
Maybe they've spent so much in the past they don't have to spend again, which I hard to believe. We have to be day to day. But when you take a look at it, our transportation sector has seen a 41% year-over-year increase in cyber attacks. It's like, for some reason, they think transportation is the industry segment to go after. I just hope people aren't asleep at the wheel out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And 41%. I mean, that's a number that just cannot be ignored, right, Gene?
Correct. I mean, that's and there's been some very visible and tangible impacts. I mean, we've seen it out there of companies that have been crippled with it. I can't imagine going through that.
Well, and supply chain is life-saving, right? In a variety of different ways. And we need to make sure that it continues to move and that we continue to move product. And that's why I'm glad that Erin, you brought that up today, because it's such an important point. And Gene, obviously being one of the surprises within the results that you saw from the report, it just goes to show how many people are thinking about it, speaking about it, and how many more need to do so. Did you see any other new trends come out from the results that you can share with us?
I mean, at the top of it is the supply chain TMS, transportation management system that Mohan mentioned. I mean, 64%, that's the lifeblood of what they're doing every day. So that's not surprising. The digital document solution, 48%. I knew that was going to be up there quite a bit. Nobody wants to be dealing with paper, and it's not just moving PDFs, but digital ingestion of data, through the document system. And then there was a good, healthy investment in warehouse automation. So 39%. and I can imagine exactly what they're trying to do there. They're seeking operational efficiency. From working with customers, I see two areas that they focus on. I mean, the first part is a product WMS. It's revenue generating distribution. It's value added product to their traditional forwarding product. So we see quite a bit of that. But then there's also a transit warehouse element. So as part of their job of moving freight and moving that across terminals and across their dock, how can they use tech solutions within, their internal requirements to operate, more effectively and control cost.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the warehouse one did not surprise me too much, but it did point to a trend in that there's a lot more people looking at that particular area as far as technology. Mohan, what were the surprises for you? Were you expecting more or maybe less investment in some of those areas?
Blockchain was the biggest thing, right?
I was wondering who was going to bring that one up.
It's 2%. Like, I wouldn't have thought. Well, there it is. But I also want to add out what Gene said about cybersecurity, right? When we hear cybersecurity, we always think firewalls, two-factor authentication, secure passwords, these things. They're necessary, right? But I think the biggest factor that most companies overlook is security awareness training. Yeah. Without training, you could have the best technology, but it's nothing. It's useless against the bad actors that employ social engineering tactics. Mm-hmm. For years, logistics has been under the radar, but I think the bad guys have figured out that there's big money in logistics, so it's now on their list, and we've seen a lot of these things over the years. So, we need to make security awareness a priority and carefully vet technology, just to make sure it's secure by default.
Yeah. Well, and to give one example, I was on a panel with a cybersecurity expert just a couple of months ago. And if you're not thinking about cybersecurity now, you do want to be thinking about it because they are actually taking a copy of your voice and sending a recording to your CFO and saying, let's transfer 200,000 into this bank account. And then the CFO or the CEO is like, what happened? And the CFO is like, well, you told me to. And he's like, no, I didn't. So if we are far behind in cybersecurity today, these are the things that have already come out. And not to scare anybody, but really that surprising number that you were talking about, Gene, it needs to be a lot higher with those kind of things coming out.
And you're right, and Mohan as well. I mean, we can put in all the firewalls we want, but it's the human element that the horror stories I hear is usually a human element, just as you had mentioned. Of somebody acting without verifying or clicking on the wrong link.
Yes, the clicking on the wrong link. And now they're texting.
Yep, we're the weakest link for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. But the text is what gets me. Anyways, I just want to remind everybody, if you have any questions, make sure to get them in the comments because we're going to be getting to those questions in just a little bit. So, Erin, are businesses going to continue to invest? Are they thinking about investing more or are they thinking about scaling back? What did you see in the report? What are your thoughts? What are you thinking about at Janel Group?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the report shows there will be continuation in investment, and I would agree with that. I think to stay relevant and to stay competitive, you're going to have to continue to embrace technology, and you're going to need it if you're going to want to be able to scale your business and grow. I think, though, that we need to be smart about our investments. I think, in the last year and a half or so, there's been a lot of yes to trying new and different things. I think now we're at a point where it's, yes, we want to do that, but we want to be smart about what we're investing in, better planning, better implementation, and getting end users within those organizations more engaged up front. So you have buy-in with those investments. I think that the industry is becoming pretty saturated with solutions. I think, Sarah, you said that a few minutes ago. It's definitely true. So it allows people and organizations like myself as the consumer the ability to be more selective and be more picky about what we're choosing to go with and to implement. And it gives us options, which is great. And that wasn't, it wasn't always like that. So that's nice to see.
Yeah. And I think we also need to think about not only internally, but also externally. right? Like I said, there's a lot of moving parts in supply chain. And so how is our ecosystem coming together? How are we integrating? How are we bringing everybody together so that we can have the visibility that everybody is wanting and talking about? So a lot of the conversations I have on my podcast and at events really focus on taking a holistic approach, whether that's across the whole supply chain, like I just said, or specifically when it comes to digital transformation. And of course, everybody knows that I believe that collaboration is the future of business. But you've discovered a disconcerting trend, right? In that many transformation efforts still remain fragmented. So, Jean, talk to us about that. How are businesses describing the current state of digital transformation within their organizations? Are they thinking just internally? Are they thinking internally and externally? I mean, that's a really important part of the digital journey.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised with this. 32% state that they take a holistic digital transformation journey across the entire organization.
That's low.
So if we build on what Erin said, that in the past, you know, log tech being a very exciting up and coming area, large number of solutions, a lot of shiny objects. I think people now are a little bit more scrutinizing ROI versus experimental investments. Let's give it a try and see what happens. But a large segment, 36% have individual projects, and I was surprised that it's more individual versus the holistic. So the question is, why is it not leaning more towards the holistic side, if that's what we all agree on?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, Mohan, why do you think that is? Like, why aren't the learnings that many of us took from the pandemic being better utilized? I mean, I feel like we've been talking about supply chain being siloed forever. And I think, Erin, you can back me up on this. Why are we still thinking about like this?
Look, I think it's just how some companies operate, and they haven't learned the lesson, right? We see this all the time. We were part of a project where there were two ongoing projects, separate departments, but nobody communicated that. The two teams were working separately, but they were working with a shared set of clients. And it caused a huge conflict because both of these projects went live at the same time, and it was not well coordinated. And that was a huge problem. Same company, two different teams, just not talking to each other. And all it needed was an email that says, hey, we're working on this project, right? And that's all it took. And that's where fragmented projects within an organization can really cause some serious harm to the company. You could lose a customer like that. So you really have to step back as a company and as management, say, look, what are we working on? Are we spinning our wheels here? Are we duplicating efforts, right? Because that happens too when you have two different projects happening at the same time. We've had cases where two teams are working on the same thing, two different vendors, two different solutions, same company. And big problem. So you really have to be careful with that. So try to move away from silos to a more unified approach and operate as a single cohesive unit. It's more efficient, less costly, you have a better customer experience, because at the end of the day, really what you have to focus on is customer-centric outcomes, right? And when I say customer, that's external and internal, because you have to treat your staff as internal customers too, right? And it's, you have to embrace continuous learning and adaptation. It's a journey, right? It's not a destination. Implementation and continuous improvement is a journey. It keeps happening all the time. You can't just say, hey, we're done. You have to keep improving and getting better.
Yeah, that really is the key, right? Everybody thinks it's an end destination, but it's the journey. And I think, one of the things that has been a challenge that people talk about is IT resources. And sometimes, I get in conversations with people about, expand your supply chain teams, maybe put somebody with some technology background on your supply chain teams. And maybe you don't have to go through your IT resources. But what you're saying is that we need to make sure we're all on the same page, even if we do that, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
And what do you say to people who are having challenges with their IT resources? Because maybe they need a piece of technology today, but IT resources are kind of tied up for the next 6 months.
Yeah. So look, it depends on the technology you're using, right? if you take something modern that's cloud-based, that's got everything coded in there, you really don't need quote unquote an IT person. What you need is more someone that's aligned with the business, that understands the business, but can configure your system. Because we're no longer coding in that sense, right? We're no longer managing infrastructure. What we're doing is we're taking business rules and business requirements and configuring the system to meet those requirements. And that's really key. You can't take a person that has just IT experience to do that. You need someone that understands the business, where when they're asked about something, they know exactly what they're being asked to do. And they can also go back and say, well, no, you don't want to do it this way. You want to do it this way because this is the way it should be done, whether it's a compliance issue or, it's just the way maybe they're doing it wrong. I can't tell you how many times I've come into a new client and say, well, you're doing it wrong. And I'm not afraid to say it. I'll say
it. That doesn't surprise me, Mohan.
But Mohan, that's how we've always done it.
Hey, that's the biggest enemy right there.
Well, and I think, you hit on a good point, is that, if you do show up to a client and they're working on the same thing, but in two different departments, then obviously the collaboration is not happening internally. And you don't have the right people at the table. So Jean, if we're not learning lessons and remaining in silos, what's the risk of this? What's the risk to the industry? Like, are we going to end up going backwards if we really don't break these silos?
Well, we're certainly not going to move forward fast, whether we go backwards, but we're certainly not going to get the most out of it. Projects that are siloed tend to not yield high results. When we can take a look at it holistically, as we've got a shared belief in the industry, that's the way to go. The holistic versus micro solutions for silos. The holistic is what solves the core deep problems, not these little mosquito pain points. But that's what solves the core deep problems. And that's where people get the greatest return from.
Absolutely. Now, Erin, on the flip side of that, what are the opportunities? Like, if we make the right investment decisions and we keep collaboration and that holistic approach in mind, what impact can this have for logistics organizations?
So I have to say, everything you've all described, we've been through all those phases within our organization, right? And so there's a lot of lessons to be learned from all of that and all those experiences. And I think that when you look at the whole picture and you sit there, as a leadership team and say, here's the big picture of the organization and we want to decide this together, and you have IT sitting at the table, like with what Mohan said about having IT and the business collaborate and on the same page, there's a ton of opportunities there, right? And I pride myself on making sure that my team learns the business. I mean, when I started, I was in IT, but I sat in a bullpen 12 years ago with job operators. And so you understand what's really going on. And I think with that, it creates opportunities for you. So I think the more that we can make sure the collaboration and communication is in place, and you have everyone mapping out what our strategic goals are for the year or 5-year plan or whatever it's going to be, it's going to make the digital transformation that much easier. You're all on the same page. You prioritize. You don't have two departments doing the same project 2 different ways or whatever it may be. And then that stretches out to with the vendors and the partnerships as well. You want it all to be transparent. Everyone know what's going on. And then you realize that if you've got this list of projects, we're all on the same page doing them. Yeah, this one's done. Let's move on to the next. Let's move on to this one. So it brings us that much further towards our goal as an organization. And I personally believe it's from the top down, right? So you really have to have a strong executive team that's being transparent and engaging the entire organization if we're going to be successful with any of these digital transformation initiatives and efforts.
Well, and communication, right? You nailed it on the head. I was talking to somebody the other day in procurement, and they were like, when you go and talk to another department about what's happening in procurement, don't use procurement jargon. You need to speak to them and tell stories about why this actually matters, what it's going to mean to their day-to-day versus, as to why we're implementing it, right? And I think sometimes when we're in logistics, we do tend to have conversations with some of those acronyms. That's why we have a dictionary, because there's like 77 pages of acronyms. But we need to bring that down. We need to bring customer experience into it, that last mile delivery. We need to bring in marketing. What are you going to market, and how much do we need to bring in? What does that look like? Because there's such an effect on both sides that communication really is essential on top of the technology. Right. And was that key to your success with the digital transformations that you've been doing, Erin?
I think so. I mean, yeah, go back to the communication and being able to say, these are the positive outcomes from this, and they really translate across all the departments, because then you're all seeing a positive impact from it.
Yeah. And some of the stats from this report, 36%, we have an individual digital transformation projects spread across the organization. So that's what Mohan was talking about. Like, there's 36% of people who have lots of different projects happening all over the place. But what I'd like to see was the 32% have embarked on that holistic digital transformation journey that we are talking about today. So, congratulations to those who are doing that. So now, a big part of achieving a successful holistic approach is visibility. Now, this word, I don't know about all of you, but this word comes up a lot for me, and it means different things to different people. It's been a hot topic over the last few years, and it continues to be at the forefront of supply chain trends. Jean, what is visibility? What impact is it having? What are organizations seeing from their investment in visibility tools? And when you talk about visibility tools, what do you mean?
So the stat we had questioned earlier, I think 78% had invested in visibility. So you're right, it's huge. And depending on who you talk to, might have different things. What I had said earlier, that visibility is more than just seeing where your freight is, but visibility is being able to plan for your freight as far as on arrival and arranging truckers and distribution centers. I think we've learned a lot on the backside of the hype cycle of visibility. The dashboard itself of status events isn't enough. People are now wanting it to be tightly woven into their operational system as far as actionable information, so that they can act on it, as we had said. The more automated it is, the stronger the value that is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I talked a lot about that with Richard in the podcast that we did about WiseTech, and he had a really interesting take on visibility. And I think it was something along the lines of, if you don't have data, you don't have visibility, and if you're not using the data properly. And so I encourage everybody to go and listen to that episode to hear a little bit more about visibility. But Erin, what have been some of the main challenges and barriers for you in implementing technologies that enable more visibility? Like, I remember when I was sitting there and I was working at a freight forwarding company, somebody said that they wanted to be able to see, like Uber, where their freight was on the water. And I was like, I don't know when that's going to happen, but that's far off. And I was totally wrong. But I'm sure from your standpoint, implementing some of these technologies with visibility, meaning different things to different people, what does that look like? What are some of the challenges that you faced?
Well, I think that podcast probably answered that right out the gate. Is the one word response is data, right? So, I think challenges. As an organization, literally everyone has to be prepared, from the desk level to your leadership team, to your partners, your vendors. If you don't have that data, you're in trouble, right? So offering that visibility turns into a quick deep dive into your operational processes, your flows, what data you do have. It definitely can be a real eye opener, right? So let's say you start looking at one customer that wants certain visibility enabled for them. Well, what's the operations team doing with those shipments? What's the team doing with those entries? What data is being keyed in versus what data is automatically being received from whatever feed we're integrated with or connected to? So really, so less than stellar data missing documentation, bad data, bad feeds, bad connections, identifying operational process failures. That's all the things that you have to look at and be prepared for when you're diving into visibility. And I think, going back to the pandemic, right, that forced quickly because everyone wanted to see something on their screen.
Yeah.
We're getting into a generation where they may not necessarily want to pick up a phone. That's a thing we hear often. They just want to log in at 1 a.m. and see where their freight is. And so you have to be willing to accommodate a bunch of different customers, right? And those are some of those challenges. So looking back then, we implemented a visibility platform for showing statuses and documents and everything else, but we had to work fast to get up to speed to be prepared to offer that. And I'm sure Mohan's seen that too with other customers. It's like, you got to get it together real quick and figure out what's going on. Why are those fields blank?
Yeah. Well, that 1 o'clock in the morning. I mean, I remember working long hours in freight forwarding, but I don't remember wanting to look at my shipment at 1 o'clock in the morning. So that is new. Mohan, do you want to jump in here?
Absolutely.
Talking about data, what are you seeing? What are people talking about? I mean, I feel like we've been talking about this for a long time.
Oh yeah, look, when we talk visibility, everyone immediately thinks visibility from a customer perspective, right? And yep, that's really important. That's what we're doing, right? Giving the customer information. And I say information and not data because information is what they're looking for. It's the actionable items, right? Visibility is useless unless you have actionable items. It's only valuable if you have something in there to action. But remember, your customer visibility is driven by your internal data, which your operators see. And what we've been doing a lot is we've been creating internal dashboards because these internal dashboards provide visibility to the team internally so they can see what's missing and what's not missing or where there are problems and actionable data. And look, we keep things simple because you keep it simple and it works, right? You make things complex and then you lose sight of things. So that's what we do a lot. And it's been very successful where we've got visual boards internally. It shows you exactly where a shipment's at. And then it shows you if there's a problem, because that's what everybody wants to see when there's a problem. If everything is going as normal, nobody really cares. We want to know when there is an issue.
Right. Or at least to somebody to give us a crystal ball to let us know before it actually happens. I mean, I don't know what logistics professional has not been asked that because I've been asked that before. And so what ties all of this together is really people. And we've talked a little bit about this. We've learned that a lack of collaboration and buy-in is really impacting organizations because they are both absolutely vital for meaningful progress. So Mohan, when it comes to people and change management, what should companies do to help when changing processes and implementing new technologies? I mean, earlier we did talk about training and how important training is. What else do we need to consider?
Yeah, and I'll probably echo some of the points that we mentioned earlier, but I think the biggest obstacle we come across for change is we've always done it that way, right? We hear that all the time.
Are we
it
still
works.
Hearing that?
We've done it that way. So why change, right? And people are afraid of change. So, and that's where we come in as a partner, right? We come in, we hold our hands, we provide that support, and we say it's going to work, and we make sure that that system is implemented successfully, and we instill that confidence, right? That says, yep, we've done it before, we know it works, it's going to work. And that's really what most people want to hear. And look, don't be afraid of change. If you don't try something new, how are you going to know if it works or not, right? You've got to try it. And you take that, we've always done it that way to, what can we do better? Right. And the minute you start asking that question, you start to get people thinking outside of the box. Like, oh, yeah, we've always done it that way. But now with new technology and new tools, we can do this better. We can be more efficient. Right. Like going paperless. Nobody wants to get rid of paper. But the minute you show them that you could replicate that digitally and everything is all right, the world's not falling apart, they're OK. Right.
Yeah.
But you've got to instill that confidence in them and, be transparent, communicate your plans. Learn from your failures as usual, those things. And ongoing support, right? It's not just training. You got to keep supporting staff all along. You can't just train them one time and run away. You got to keep that going. So
you can't
to keep things. I guess you could. Wouldn't be very successful, but you could.
The key to success right there, people, about digital transformation. No, I appreciate that, Mohan. And Erin, you talked about it being a top-down approach. what do you think about from an employer perspective? What are some of the main objections that you've heard? And I'm sure you're going to echo, and I hope you're not going to echo what Mohan said. We've always done it like this, because I would hope in 2023 we've gotten rid of that sentence. But
so unfortunately, I do what Mohan said. So fear of change. You hear and deal with that a lot of, oh, I don't have something physical to show this proof to me, so I'm very uncomfortable here, when, you can see it reflected in your database, right? This is the way we've always done it, which Mohan, you said, and that's literally a quote that we still get to this day. We're able to overcome a lot of this, but you still get that feedback. And I think everyone needs to be involved, like I said, top down. So it's making sure you get buy-in at every level of the organization, and being able to assure them that this isn't some kind of ploy to eliminate headcount. It's really, which is something that comes up too, and comes up in discussions at all levels. And the reality is we're not trying to reduce positions. We're trying to be able to scale for the future so we can grow the organization. And we can't do that unless we embrace that technology. So we really, push that as well, of doing these improvements, is what we call them. So that
well, and you're changing hearts and minds, right? What kind of conversations do you think that we need to have at the employee level? Like, is it, creating a safe space so that they can ask whatever questions that they want to ask? I know that's sometimes hard. You might have to do it anonymously, right? And then address some of those questions. But, how do we create that space so that we can talk about scaling for the future instead of scaling back?
We're really open door at Janel Group, and we have a lot of conversations at that local level with our branch teams and operators. And we embrace the feedback from everyone. We also realize still, even with all the growth that we've had, there's some uniqueness and different cultures at each of our locations. And so we want to embrace that and understand their processes, so that as we make changes, we're taking all of that into account. So we really just try to make sure that we have really strong relationships, and we're just trying, we want everybody to realize, and we work hard with the communication so that they know that we're just trying to better the organization and make their jobs easier too, right? Why they could be focused on something that's more important than just going to update something in a record, or some task that's going over and over again. Instead, working with a customer, or picking up the phone and calling them, or trying to take a customer to lunch, instead of having all this busy work that's going on. And so I think it's really that it is that communication and having those open conversations for us.
Yeah, we sometimes like our busy work, don't we? So if anybody wants to download the report, we've just put the link in the comments. So go and check that out. And so finally, Jean, what is the impact of what we're talking about, change management, people, on some of the key trends? What did you find from the report, like workplace culture? How does that really define a digital transformation?
Okay. Well, first of all, on Erin's, as far as people being threatened by increase in productivity, I think if it's a growth company, it's easier to do. So you can put in an improvement project on a growth company and increase your throughput 20%. When you have a flat company, there's Parkinson's law. The work will output will expand or contract to whatever the workload is. So if you're a flat company, we're probably not going to get that productivity win out of them. So it's always more fun to do with the growth company. And I know what you said. 2023, we shouldn't be worried about because that's how we've always done it. But the results showed that still 41% said that the main objection from personnel in relation to new technologies was difficult in adapting existing processes to new technologies. And I know Mohan doesn't waste a lot of time, and Erin doesn't waste a lot of time doing that. It's, how can we operate differently? Sarah, when you had Richard on, a few weeks ago, he talked about the WiseTech global mantra, and it's more than a mantra. I mean, we live it. It's culture eats strategy for lunch. So if you've got the right culture there to innovate and process improvement, and as Mohan says, it's a journey, and you got to keep training. I think if you have that culture there, people are more accepting to letting go of the old way of doing things and embracing the new. Because all of us, if we were starting over tomorrow, there'd be things that we'd be doing differently today. But it's just hard letting go of some of the old legacy ways. There's still some albatross of legacy debt, hanging around people's necks out there.
Mm-hmm. But I think the data from the research that you've collected is so invaluable for that reason. We can get a better understanding of what everybody is going through and how they're thinking about different things so that we can be successful in the strategy, right? The onboarding, the implementation. We can take this data and turn it into the information that we need to bring technology on successfully. All right, I cannot believe that we are coming to an end, but finally then, what would you like to leave the audience with? Do you have a final thought or maybe question or an action item that people can take from this conversation and move into a successful digital transformation? Mohan, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, so look, that report clearly shows that businesses are serious about technology, right? A majority said that their investment will remain the same or increase, and that sends a clear message. So that was pretty interesting to see. A majority of respondents also said that companies should be investing in training and followed by ongoing process and just train your employees on new technologies. So that shows that there are cases out there where technology is thrown in and go figure it out, right? Mm-hmm. And that's really not the way to do things when you're implementing technology. Proper training and implementation is necessary. And as a consultant, we see companies that are serious about technology. They use that to unlock the full potential of their technology investment. Mm. That's where you're going to get your money's worth. You have to use every bit of it. You're paying for it, use it. And look, it's a journey, not a destination, right? So when you think you're using it to its full potential, there are other creative ways that it probably can be used to make you more efficient and more productive. So you should always be looking for those opportunities to improve and be better at what you do on a daily basis.
I like that. Great action plan. Erin, you're up next.
I would say at all levels of every organization, be willing to take risks and try new things. And I think you're going to learn just as much, from your failures or your team's failures and attempts. And it's just going to make you more successful in the long run. And I think that, that just reflects on all this digital transformation and being willing to try something different. Especially speaking to those in leadership roles, we have to, if we're going to stay competitive and drive things forward.
Absolutely. Thank you, Erin. Last but not least, Jean, you've got the last word.
Well, I don't have much to say after Mohan and Erin. They covered most of it. You're right. 95% are maintaining or increasing their spending. They're spending money on it. As Erin said, they're a little bit more critical of the ROI that they're looking for out there. Visibility is still as important as it was in 2021, but again, it needs to be tightly woven into our operations and actionable. And going forward, the digital transformation, many people have gone on in the past. It's not cutting edge. People realize they need to innovate or die, so they're going through that process. And there's a lot of lessons learned on it. I think that's why contrary to the stats we saw, I do see the industry more moving into a holistic approach than what they've done in the past in the siloed.
Yeah, and it's exciting. So it's clear that the logistics industry is experiencing a transformational shift driven by a combination of factors from digital advancement to lessons learned from the pandemic. And the insightful new research from CargoWise that we shared today is so useful in showing exactly how your organization can successfully embrace this shift. Move away from silos, continue to focus on customer and employee-centric outcomes. Embrace continuous learning and adaptation, and your organization will be at the forefront of unlocking the future of logistics. Thank you so much to Jean, Erin, and Mohan for joining me today. That was a fantastic discussion. We've covered so much, and I've got lots of ideas and lots of things that I want to talk about. A big thank you to everyone who joined us today, and remember to check out the report in the comments. And if you'd like to learn more about CargoWise, go to cargowise.com. There's lots of useful information there about how they can help you with your organization to tackle some of the big issues we've talked about today. Thanks again, everyone, and I'll see you again soon.